everybody. My name is Mike Gutzler, and this is a podcast where we are talking with amazing community individuals and organizers that are making positive impacts in our neighborhood and around the world. And I'm really excited to introduce to you today our friend from Lutheran World Relief, Emma Wagner. Hello, Emma. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm Emma Wagner, and I serve on staff of Lutheran World Relief. My role is Senior Advisor for Congregational Engagement, which means I get to travel and meet with pastors and meet with congregations and share your impact from our partnership and our great work around the world.
Wonderful. Thanks again for being here. So, why did you join Lutheran World Relief, and how long have you been there?
Sure, yeah. So I started on staff June of 2020. So a little over 4 years, and I was working in local government before serving on staff of a city councilman in Philadelphia. And then we moved. My husband's a pastor, so he got a call in a different synod. So we moved to Delaware, where I was working in a community center, doing kind of running the operations, and it wasn't quite right. I have a degree from a seminary, and I wanted that theological background, and I wanted a way to use my skills to really help people live out their baptismal promise to work for justice and peace in the world. And so when this job opened up, it seemed like a good fit, and I love it. I love getting to help people see their impact.
Yeah. I feel like every time I talk to you, you're having just such a great time over there and doing all sorts of cool and fun things. You're traveling different places. Is there like a personal story or a place that you've been where Lutheran World Relief's having a positive impact that you could share with us?
Sure, yes, of course. So first, I guess I'll say when I started in 2020, no one was traveling anywhere. And so I've been to one of our country projects in Peru. I went in 2022. And this project that I got to visit is kind of a perfect example of our work. We visited a region called the Castroviriana region. It's way high up in the Andes Mountains. It was about a 15-hour bus ride from Lima.
Wow.
Um, One dirt road in and out of this village, and if Lutherans weren't there, no one else would be there. We started there about 12 years ago when there was a famine in the area, and most families left. Most families went to the coast to search for food, but the ones that stayed were eating the seeds that they had to plant for the year. That's how dire the situation was. And the reason we started there is because we were worried about childhood malnutrition, severe childhood malnutrition. Every single kid there was anemic. And I don't know if you know anything about anemia, but if it's not treated as a child, then your brain doesn't develop correctly.
Hmm.
And so the community leaders were looking at the future of their community, saying we have to do something. So they invited us to come in, and we were able to introduce some things. Guinea pigs are a staple food in Peru, and they reproduce quickly, and so families use every part of the guinea pig. When we were there was a mom serving her kids blood donuts.
Hmm.
They kind of harvest the blood from the guinea pigs, dry it out, turn it into blood capsules called sangrecita. Um, so anyway, so the anemia rate went from 100% to down to 60% when I was there in 2022.
Oh my gosh.
Um, Not great still, but it was kind of both a story of success and need.
So how do you go about engaging with the local community or local government or local organizations to partner with? Like, how does that even happen?
Yeah, so we only go where we're invited. We have had a presence in Peru for decades, and so our this local organization got in touch with our home office in Lima and asked if we could come and help. And so we go through a vetting process. We work through local partners. That's kind of how we do all of our work around the world. And so they have to meet certain criteria. They have to be faith-based. They have to, be from the community. They have to take ownership of the project. And once they've met all those things, then we can start bringing in our technical experts and our resources. And so the idea is that we are in these places for as long as it takes. Hopefully, we get to leave at some point when the community is self-sustaining. What we've seen in this village in Peru is that as things get better for them, they they're asking for more resources to do bigger things. So, for example, a few years ago, they were growing things so well in these greenhouses that we gave them. They asked for a mill,
Oh,
so that they could start selling their grains in the regional market.
nice.
So
And so
we built a mill.
that's awesome. And
Yeah.
so that kind of speaks to your ability to create programs that are sustainable over years. So is that part of the Lutheran World Relief objective when they go anywhere, or is that just something that naturally grows depending on the situation, or something else?
Yeah. So we tackle global poverty by working with communities to build long-term sustainable projects. I mean,
Hmm.
that's our goal. We want to eradicate poverty in the communities where we're serving. They have to be sustainable, enable for us to leave, right? Like the goal is that the community is able to be on their own. Um, we build and grow rural economies. So this is another example of that kind of piece of our work. And then the third piece of our work is more about emergency and disaster relief.
Oh, okay. Can you say a little bit more about that and some areas that you are working in right now?
Yeah, so the emergency and disaster response arm has gotten bigger. I guess could I start by backing up and talking about
Absolutely.
history? So
Yeah, yeah.
So Lutheran World Relief was founded at the end of World War II when German Lutherans here in the US were worried about their families back at home. And our mission started simply by sending material resources. So we sent clothes and food and um, blankets to Europe. From there, the mission kind of expanded quickly, and now we go where the needs are greatest. And so, while our mission is to eradicate poverty, it often means that we have to go where there's a disaster or war because those things push people into poverty immediately.
Yeah.
So, moving forward, then, a couple places that we're responding to disasters or war right now would be like Ukraine. We've been in Ukraine since 10 days after the war started. I
Wow.
think most organizations thought that most people thought the war would be over quickly, and now we're 2.5 years later. Our response has been the largest humanitarian response in Lutheran World Relief history because of donors. I mean, we raised over $12 million for our work in Ukraine.
Wow.
And
And
it's meant that we've been able to shelter thousands of people, provide 3 meals a day, buy mobile medical clinics that go out to communities to provide healthcare to people who otherwise wouldn't have it. It's been really amazing, and of course the need is ongoing.
yeah,
Um,
that's extraordinary. Like, what it seems like the scope of Lutheran World Relief is pretty broad in terms of the ways that you care for others.
Yeah, it is, and it has expanded certainly in recent years. We started to see that poverty is not just about agriculture or not just about food, which is what our roots are in. Um, we've really expanded our work into healthcare. In
Hmm.
2019, we partnered with another organization called IMA World Health, and it was a perfect time to partner with a health-based organization right before the pandemic hit, but it wasn't intended that way. It was intended to to implement a more holistic approach to poverty reduction
Okay.
because it's not just about food, it's about health and education and technology and climate change.
Being at Lutheran World Relief and not only taking care of global poverty issues, but also at the same time responding to either natural disasters or other kinds of traumatic needs like war-torn situations like that. Do you find that there's any kind of current trends that are growing, or challenges that Lutheran World Relief is facing now today, as opposed to so many years ago when you were all just getting started post World War II?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest trend we're seeing right now is related to climate change.
Hmm.
Climate change is it has affected every single one of our projects,
Wow.
whether that's because of drought. Particularly in Africa, there's been a decade of drought, which has created all sorts of problems. Whether it's because of migration, people are moving, and so that's creating refugee crises, political conflict. Climate change really is at the root of so many problems that we're seeing right now, an increase in natural disasters.
Hmm.
So that's a trend we're closely monitoring, and we would love to partner with an environmental, like a faith-based environmental agency, to help us work on this. We've had to naturally implement solutions in all of our projects. I could share an example.
Yeah, please. That'd be awesome.
So in Kenya, the climate is hot and dry, and there's not much there's not much water runoff. So when it rains, the few times it does rain, the water evaporates quickly. So it makes it really hard to grow crops. And so we implemented with the farmers we work with something called Zai pits, Zai pits,
Okay.
and they're just kind of these shallow beds, pretty simple to create. But you just dig a kind of a shallow bed, plant your crops inside of that bed, so that the little water that does come stays in that bed instead of running off and then evaporating. And we've seen success with it. So that's just one example of how we've had to pivot because of climate change.
Wow. That's great. So, like, what kind of work would you want to do with that faith-based, climate-focused organization? Like, what kind of new insights are you hoping to gain, or might be out there that would be good for you all to know?
Yeah, we need to get ahead of the game,
Hmm.
and I don't know that we right now have. It would be great to just have another thought partner for sure to think about how, like, what the future is of international development with the climate change lens.
Hmm. Wow. Okay. And then, so I guess with that partnership, but also internally, you guys are trying to think strategically, or having priorities as you move forward, given these kind of global trends and climate related issues. Like, so where do you feel like things are going to have to go for Lutheran World Relief in the future? Like, how do you stay ahead of the game, like you mentioned?
Well, I think I guess this is backing up to kind of my job.
Hmm.
I'm always trying to highlight for congregations and for individuals places around the world that there's great need but doesn't make the headlines. You know, we see natural disasters, we see war, we hear about Ukraine still in the news, but there are there are great humanitarian crises in other places that are not talked about. Sudan, Yemen. I mean, these places there's so much. The DRC. There's so much need, and so um, my goal is to share stories from those places that highlight the need and the successes that we've had, so that people are interested in partnering with us, particularly giving unrestricted dollars so that we can expand our work in those areas.
Nice. Yeah. What's if you can, what's a powerful story that you've been sharing with congregations recently?
Yeah. South Sudan. The situation there is dire. About 4 million people are displaced. There's crisis level food insecurity, famine, almost famine like conditions. We're working in a rural area of the country where there there's really no access to roads. So the way that people get around, it floods. So the way that people get around is by canoe or by foot. And we have a couple of projects going. One is related to food, one is related to medical care. And the one related to medical care, I think, is the most interesting project we have going on right now. We have 4 mobile medical clinics that follow people around, follow kind of the nomadic people who have been displaced because of war first, and then flooding second. This community travels to look for food. So our mobile team follows them around. If we weren't there, again, no other outside organizations would be there. And we've built the reputation that people know now that they can come to the Lutherans to get vaccines and get medicine. Um, the work is, of course, challenging because the only way to get places is by foot or canoe. So imagine carrying an entire mobile medical clinic in a canoe, or literally
Yeah.
carrying it. So how do you do that? The logistics are just insane. We recently purchased a speedboat. The idea was to get supplies out to the community, so our staff could use the speedboat to get it out to the community instead of having to carry it, backpack, whatever. Um, what it's turned into is an ambulance.
Oh, wow.
So if a very sick kid presents, so this was a story that happened. There's a really sick little boy named Wani. He came to our mobile medical clinic with malaria. He had a very high fever. He needed to be treated. We brought the fever down, but he needed to be seen in a hospital. The closest hospital is 3 to 5 hours by canoe. So we put him in the boat, and he got there in 45 minutes,
Oh,
and
wow.
his life was saved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about Lutheran World Relief and the staff that you have there. But I get the impression that it's not just staff from here in the United States that's transferred over there. It's actually your staff includes a lot of locals and people who are on the ground and a part of that community and country or even the locality that are part of that you guys call your staff. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm the when I say our staff, I don't mean any Americans. They're all South Sudanese people
Yeah. And that goes for a lot of your projects, right? That
everywhere
it's
for the
that
most part.
so the Lutheran World Relief staff is really a staff of tons of local people that know the culture, that know the situation, and can best serve the community. They're not outsiders.
They have to be. They have to be to have the trust of the community. For us um, to to know the language, to know all the cultural things. Yeah, that they have to be from the community that they're serving. We have, I would say, the one exception to that would be like a natural disaster. We have a humanitarian assistance team that's based in the U.S. that goes right away. But then for our longer term projects and projects like the one in South Sudan, they're all Sudanese citizens.
How does Lutheran World Relief go about respecting and honoring local cultures or communities or different religions in the neighborhoods and the communities that you work with?
Sure. So, first, I will say it helps that our staff are all from the communities where we work, so they understand the religious sensitivities and the cultural sensitivities. We do not evangelize. That's one thing we certainly have made a commitment not to do. We believe that our job is to share the gospel by doing the work, by meeting people's physical needs. And so we do work in the majority Muslim countries around the world. And it's one reason why sometimes quilting groups ask us, why can't we put, you know, with love from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, but we can't have any religious or political symbols on anything that we distribute to keep our participants safe. But it's
Yeah.
really it's a safety thing. So um, yeah, so we for our headquarters staff, we do some trainings around cultural sensitivity. Before any headquarters staff go to a country, we do trainings and make sure that we understand the context.
Yeah. And so it sounds like obviously you're also employing non Lutherans in the neighborhoods and the regions that you're working in, simply because that's just the realistic situation on the ground. Like there probably isn't any said Lutherans, but there's probably a bunch of people that could be a part of your staff from different faith lives and traditions.
Lutherans are being Lutheran is our root, and how it's how we identify ourselves. And um, but I'll say also our headquarters staff are mostly not Lutheran.
Huh.
Yeah, people, we hire everyone, and so as long as people have a commitment to doing this work and um, are justice oriented, then you certainly don't have to be Lutheran to work at Lutheran World Relief.
Yeah.
Uh, I also could say that we are known around the world as the the Lutherans are known for our expertise in humanitarian aid and development. Not because we're Lutheran, but because we're good at this work.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool that Lutherans here in the U.S. can claim that we are experts in doing humanitarian aid and relief around the world.
So as you think about growing and looking to the next decade ahead, what are some things that you as an organization and then you as an individual as you connect to congregations really want to focus on, or do you have goals as an entity or for yourself?
Yeah. Oh, wow, gosh, the next decade. So we've talked about goals for the next 5 years.
Oh yeah, that's
We,
good.
yeah, so I guess for our team, we want to grow congregational revenue. We want to engage more Lutheran congregations, um, possibly, um, possibly engaging congregations that are not just Lutheran. Um, we want to be in more countries. We're in about 35 countries right now, and we want to be in more places. There's so much need, and so um, when you think about what we're able to do, it is really incredible. But we could do so much more,
Yeah.
with more staff, with more resources. Yeah, there are places here in the U.S. that could use our expertise and our resources, but we we really want to be in more places. We want to be in all the places that are the hardest to reach that other people can't or won't get to.
So
Yeah.
I know that you engage congregations and their members and the pastors and raise awareness of all the fantastic stuff that you're doing in globally and locally. But if there were some members of, say, the congregation or people who may be listening to this podcast and are first introduced to you or know a little bit about you, but have kind of transitioned to that point where they want to get involved, how would you say what would you say is an entry level way for people to engage with Lutheran World Relief or with you, and that could be monetarily or that could be actively.
Mhm. Sure. So, well, Holy Trinity's done this. You could make kits.
Okay.
Quilts or kits. So we offer personal care kits, school kits, fabric kits. There's some hands-on ways that are a good way for people of all generations to start learning about our work. We have Bible studies available. We have, on our website, if you look, there are other resources for congregations and pastors. But I think the main way would be to um, go on our website, read about our work, and then make a gift. That once you make a gift, you kind of you get to know our work a little bit better, because then we're sharing impact stories with you.
And then that you can get on a newsletter or some kind of regular communication so they get updates of not only what you're doing, but also what Lutheran World Relief is doing. Is that right?
Right, exactly. LWR.org. That's Lutheran World Relief, LWR.org.
Excellent.
You can find everything there.
Okay. So let's assume that there's some folks listening to this podcast and they're made an initial gift or they're inspired by hearing your story or the stories that Lutheran World Relief are doing right now. If you think of something in terms of a big gift or some super generous donor wanted to hook you all up in some way, what are some projects or some things that come to mind for you right now?
Sure. Well, of course, we always prefer unrestricted gifts, because that allows us to do our work in a whole way. So a lot of our funding comes from USAID, or the equivalent of the British government or French government. So we get a lot of government grants and contracts, and part of that, they don't cover everything. So we need gifts that will help cover all of the costs of those projects. I'd also say another reason an unrestricted gift is important is if you think about a church budget or your own budget. If you have someone come up to you and say, "I'd love to give you a gift for an organ, but you don't need a new organ," that's not necessarily helpful. You want money that will be able to be used everywhere. If, however, someone is interested in making a large gift for a specific purpose, we can talk about that. There are projects that that we certainly have done that for. Right now, we're not ready. We're not ready to unveil it yet, but we're working on something in Sierra Leone that I think will engage some major donors. There's a Central American project that would engage some major donors. So there are ways to do that.
Nice. Okay. And if they want to have that conversation, they can reach out to you directly. Is that okay?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Awesome. What are some other things that you'd like to share, or other thoughts or elements of Lutheran World Relief that we should know, or about your work specifically that could be fun?
Well, I could share one more story if that would
Yeah,
be okay.
of course.
Okay,
Stories are great.
so we and this is a recent one. This is why it came to mind. In Ukraine, in July 8th, a Russian missile hit one of the largest hospitals treating children who have cancer in Kyiv. Did you hear about this in the
Yeah, I
news?
definitely remember seeing that on the news. Yeah.
Yep. So this hospital treats 18,000 kids annually,
Oh my gosh.
and our staff happened to be 3 blocks away. They sheltered in place. Not in place. They sheltered in an underground tunnel until the coast was clear, and then as soon as they were able to, they rushed over to the hospital, started providing aid right away, and then eventually were able to distribute some of our quilts and kits, maybe some from Holy Trinity. Um, and last week they met with more of the hospital leaders to kind of assess more of the damage and see what the solutions might be. But pretty much everything in the hospital except for the emergency department was destroyed. So it's going to require major rehabilitation and renovations. I cannot get the image out of my head of the little kids with IVs in their arms standing in the sidewalk. I mean, just the horror and trauma that they've been through. Some of the ways that we can respond right now, I think, are going to be through providing medical equipment. And I don't know exactly what that means. We'll know more in the next couple of weeks. But that this story comes to mind because the only reason that our staff was able to be there so quickly is because of the generosity of Lutherans. If Lutherans had not been so generous in our response to Ukraine, then our staff would not have been there. So it's an ongoing traumatic horror that the people of Ukraine are facing, and we are, and I'm just so grateful that we are able to say that Lutherans are there.
And you never know, right there. We're in the metropolitan Washington, D.C. area here. Lots of different hospitals or medical institutions in our neighborhood. And if there's someone listening to this podcast that's in that community and had resources for those physical donations, in addition to monetary, is that something that they could work out with you all?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We'd like to talk. Like I said, it's still so new. I'm not sure exactly what the needs are, but we know right now that it will be medical equipment.
Yeah,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
that
Yeah,
would be great.
there's a variety of ways in which people find connections to be generous,
Exactly.
but that's great. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate you and Lutheran World Relief's resourcefulness, but also ability to be super flexible and respond to terrible situations like the bombing of the hospital. For sure, that's great. Anything else you'd like to share with us today?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share some of these stories. That's my favorite part of this work.
Well, I just want to take a moment and thank you for everything that you're doing, the generosity of your time, the care and love and support that you have for the people you work with, but also for sharing those stories in always a fantastic way when you come and visit us. And I'm sure you do the same with all the other congregations that you get to visit on a regular basis. We're really grateful for you and thankful for you.
Thank you, and of course, I am certainly grateful for you and for Holy Trinity. All the people there are so wonderful.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for your time, and all the best in this next season of care and love for your neighbor.